Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Kevin Moore Show. Now, to stay up to date with all my latest videos, just click that subscribe button below, as this really helps to support the show. Now, if you're new to the show, I interview guests from a spiritual perspective, covering mainstream and alternative subjects, real-life inspirational stories, self-improvement, and much more. Now, on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Suzanne Ross. Now, in December of '95, Suzanne experienced a profound miracle that she describes as divine intervention. Since then, Suzanne has coached thousands of people, enhancing their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Now, she fully empowers people to live their best life as their highest version of themselves. Suzanne is a compassionate coach and mentor who is passionate about healing emotional trauma and clearing mental blockages. Now, she is a certified health and wellness expert, specializing in stress reduction, dynamic movement therapy for healing the mind-body connection, nutritional coaching, and personal counseling for anxiety, emotional and physical pain, and addiction recovery. Suzanne Ross, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you on, and now you're currently in Sedona. That's where you are right now. Yep. And this interview is going to be based around your book, Rise Up, which we're going to get into in just a moment as well. I think to begin with, I just want to sort of, tell your story as well of prior to Rise Up and prior to coming to Sedona, more of your awakening experience as well. And just before you get into the awakening, you were around 30 years old when this happened?
I was, yes.
Okay, so if you can just sort of, lead us into a bit about yourself and just to tell us and lead into that awakening experience.
It's 10 days on the Ascension path. I start out with how creation came into being, because when I woke up on my path, that's one of the first things I asked. I looked down at my hands and I said, who am I? What am I? What am I made of? Like, what is this reality? And where did it come from? Where did I come from? What's the source of all this? And what's the energetic nature of it? I just got incredibly curious about all of that. And so I dove into tons of research, but also started in deep trance meditations to start channeling and to start doing automatic writing. I would go out in nature and take long nature walks, connecting into the life force of all living things and beings, and started to get this profound sense of oneness and have downloads about the true nature of reality and creation. And so my book really starts with possibilities, cosmologies about how creation came into being from an infinite source, and exploring infinity, eternity, and time and space reality. And really came down to this idea about, holographic time space realms sourced from an infinite field of consciousness.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's
there you go.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. There you go. That interview over with. All right. Okay. So, there's a lot to well, actually, we're not going to unpack all that. Really, I don't think we should do. But where were you at that beginning part of your journey? Then, obviously, you're in Sedona now. You've not always been in Sedona, I'm guessing.
Correct. Yes. And so in 1995, I had a profound awakening experience on top of a mountain. I had been living on the East Coast, working in the corporate world, incredibly stressed out, many mental and physical ailments, anxiety attacks, and my hair was falling out in clumps and my skin was falling off with eczema. I knew I was incredibly misaligned with my true calling and displaced on the East Coast. On a vacation in the desert of Southern California, I ran to the top of a mountain and threw my arms up to the sky and said, I am miserable in the extreme and I see no way out. And in that moment, Kevin, I felt the air around me embracing me. And I literally heard a voice resonate within me and all around me. And it said, "Can't you see you've come home? You'll stay here and heal yourself and many others." And in 2 weeks, I completely transformed my life from a stressed out corporate executive on the East Coast to a healer in the desert of Southern California. And I've never looked back.
Just going back to what you were saying there, right? So you had this corporate life, and was there any sort of relationship there with a significant other at the time, or was it just you by yourself?
I was married to someone who traveled around the world and was
Okay,
never home.
right. Okay. So what happened to that relationship when this voice came in then?
I called and said, "We need to talk." And I flew home and got a divorce.
Wow. Okay. Um, well, I'm guessing for that to have happened, things weren't that happy anyway. Really, if he was the one, or you was in love, that wouldn't have took place just because a voice came in.
Right. He was a great guy and we loved each other, but it wasn't the love of my life. I don't think for either of us. And he thoroughly enjoyed traveling around the world. And, I wanted him to be able to keep doing that. And we
Right.
stayed friends. We had an amicable divorce, but
Yeah. Well, that's nice that you could have that. Sometimes it's not always like that. So, and when this voice came in, what did you recognize that it was? Well, did it have a name? Is that what part of your channeling was? Had you looked into that kind of stuff before? How can a voice just come to you? And most people would say, "Well, what the hell is this?" They would have had to go back and try to figure all this out. But you must have had some sort of basis in the background for that type of experience.
did not have any type of basis for it whatsoever. My
Wow,
parents
really?
weren't religious at all. I wasn't spiritual at all. My father was an atheist. We
So
never went
where
to church.
where did you go from there? So you've got this voice coming in. You know nothing about spirituality in a sense. Of like maybe you've not. I'm guessing you've not read many books in the subject from what you're saying, or no books, or you had no interest in it. So what made you trust that voice, and what was your path then to sort of figuring this all out?
On that morning that I was leaving my vacation in the desert, I was just had this overwhelming sense of impending doom about having to go back to the East Coast. And my miserable life there. And I can tell you that there was something that compelled me to run to the top of this mountain and just throw my arms up to the sky. It was a moment of desperation, a moment of surrender. And then just this profound knowing, just being, flooded with this knowing and this voice. And I've always said it came from within me and all around me. So I can tell you about a hypnotic regression I had a few years ago about what happened on that mountaintop. But in 1995, I just knew that something had spoken to me. People might call it God. But I got a message and I knew in that moment it was the absolute truth for me. And I ran down that mountain in a matter of 2 weeks. I completely transformed my life. That day, I went to the local 5-star resort and applied for a job in health and wellness. And they hired me on the spot without even qualifications in health and wellness. They said, "Can you start in 2 weeks?" I said, "Yes, I can." And walking through the parking lot, I was thinking, well, this is surreal. What have I done?
Okay, so let me get this right. So you start a new job while you've still got the existing job, and you trusted, or you just felt so transformed with the experience that you went through. You just walked the path forward of what was the most happiest thing for you to do in that moment, something that you wasn't doing for quite a long time, which was doing things from happiness.
I was only 30 years old. And I can tell you that prior to that, living on the East Coast, I knew with the anxiety attacks I was having, and literally my hair was falling out in clumps and my skin had eczema all over it. I was so stressed out and so misaligned, displaced. I felt there was no meaning and purpose to my life. I would wake up and fight brutal traffic to go to work, to fight brutal, mean-spirited politics, to fight traffic, to go home and have bed, go to bed and get up and do it over and again and again.
In my head, I had you down as, in your 40s when that experience happened, but you were just 30. Okay, well, that makes a big difference then. Wow. Okay, so you married young as well. Well, youngish. Ish.
I married like at 24. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So where is the journey then? How could we get to summarize the journey from that point to where you are now? Because, let's try to give people some basis of what you've been on. So did that voice ever come back again? How did you get into the psychic work? What was the journey? How could you summarize it? I don't know your journey, only you do. But how could you summarize that from where we're at?
So the time in the desert with that incident that had happened, I wanted to know what was the source of the voice that had offered me this guidance that felt like the absolute truth for me. I felt in a moment spontaneously healed and aligned with my true calling. And so I dove into spirituality, and I call it the Hay House brand of spirituality, because I dove into Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson and Louise Hay, and I would wear my little headset and take walks out in nature, and Wayne would be talking in my ear the whole time. And I became very curious about spirituality. I ended up opening a wellness center and dedicated my life to health and wellness, but was always very curious about spirituality. I started teaching yoga, incorporating meditation and visualization. And my life started expanding in all directions. And I felt like I was walking on cloud 9 as divine synchronicity guided my way. And I met the love of my life, who blew my hair back. And I'm still married to him today, and still in love more and more each day. So I think, when you have a really transformational moment like that, an awakening moment like that, it dramatically changes the rest of your life and set me on a very positive track. Of course, my spirituality, that was 1995. Kept getting more intensely involved in spirituality, ended up stepping on a Buddhist path after a dark night of the soul in 2008, when everything crashed and I lost my business. And yes, had a dark night of the soul for a bit, and then had another profound awakening experience and stepped on a Buddhist path. And then that really led me to some deep trance meditations. And that's really when automatic writing and channeling took off, and started writing books, and now in Sedona doing readings and healing. Yeah.
So how many books have you written?
So I'm writing the Up trilogy. The first book is Wake Up, and it's about liberating your mind from limiting beliefs. It's called Wake Up, Awakening Through Reflections. It's a 10-day life lessons workshop. When you talk about the other voice, did you ever hear the other voice again? Well, yes, I did. As I started to do these Buddhist meditations, I would hear messages. I don't know, some people call them downloads. In meditation, I would get messages, and oftentimes they were instructions to do this, do that. Well, one day on a nature walk, I'm walking through nature, feeling very present, that sense of oneness with everything. And I felt on these walks like I was in an elevated state of consciousness and connection. And one day I heard the voice say, you're going to write a 30-day book on the evolution of consciousness. And it came through as this profound knowing. And I thought, well, I'm not an author. At the time, I'm a health and wellness coach interested in spirituality. But sure enough, 5 years later, I have 2 books and I'm working on the 3rd one now. And it turns out that they were 3 10-day books. And Spirit guided me that the first one had to be for the mind. And that's where Wake Up came in. It's really about liberating the mind from limiting beliefs, balancing karma, balancing ego and spirit. And then the second book is highly metaphysical, and it's for the spirit. And we go on an ascension adventure.
And that's the book that you've come on to promote and talk about. That's Rise Up. That yes? Second book?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awakening through Revelation, 10 Days on the Ascension Path.
When did you move to Sedona?
In 2015. I had a premonition in meditation that I would move to Sedona. And when I got this download, I didn't even know about Sedona. In fact, I spelled it Sadona on my vision board. But I got a download in 2015. Scott and I would move to Sedona. So I wrote it on my vision board. In 2014, my husband promised he'd take me to the Grand Canyon. And I said, can we spin through that town called Sedona on the way? He said, sure. As we came into Sedona and I saw these magnificent red rock temples, I was just blown away. I was breathless and speechless. And then, Kevin, I started to go into the stores here, and I felt like I was remembering the future. I have a friend who wrote a book called Remembering the Future. I would go into these stores and I would feel like I recognized the people that were working there. And I would look around and I felt like I recognized the merchandise and the displays. And I knew that I was remembering the future. I was seeing into my future as being a resident of Sedona. And I felt like a resident more than I did a visitor. But, at the time, my husband was like, listen, I work in telecom in the Silicon Valley in San Francisco. Like, I don't think we're going to be moving to Sedona anytime soon. 2 weeks later, he got laid off. His company was downsizing. Long story short, he got a job in Phoenix. And in 2015, Scott and I moved to Sedona, just like the voice said I would.
And is this the voice that works with you when you're giving readings to people?
So readings feel a little different. Readings, I tend to get more visions. I get visuals, and the visuals tell a story. But when I start to tell the story, it's more like channeling. And I feel I'm channeling their higher self and their spiritual guides.
With your book, with your latest book, I know you've got another one that you're currently writing. With your latest book, Rise Up, Awaken through Revelation, just very briefly, just tell us what that book's about as well.
So it's 10 days on the Ascension path. And so I call the reader an adventurer because from the very first day, I inspire the reader to head out into nature and go on a walking meditation, go on an adventure into nature. And their first task is to find a pattern out in nature that seems to repeat itself. And the adventurer, more often than not, will notice the spiraling pattern in nature and how everything spirals out from the center. Throwing a rock into the stream and seeing it spiral outward, looking into a flower and seeing how it spirals outward. Even the wind will kick up in a spiraling fashion. And so as the reader walks, I offer them guidance about how to connect into the other living things and beings in nature, and to be aware that they are alive, to tune into this connection, that this same life force that's animating our beings is the same life force that's animating all living things and beings in nature. And to understand that there's an intelligent design behind it all as well. And then to start to ponder, what is the true nature of this reality? And what does consciousness have to do with it? And what does time have to do with it? And who am I in it? What's my role in all of this? And where is it sourced from? And so as my adventurers walk out in nature, all of these questions start to arise. And so I offer guidance around that. I present ideas about how creation did come into being through sacred geometry, through the flower of life. This idea about theoretical physics, where we talk about string theory and the energetics of how electrons work with electron wave particle duality. And I try to do it in a very engaging and entertaining way, so that the adventurers start to get an idea about how they are an aspect of the one infinite creator, and as such are creator beings. And what are they creating with? Their consciousness. By projecting their consciousness into their reality, they're literally creating it. And so I take them on a magical, mystical journey of exploring consciousness, and I call it creator consciousness, Kevin.
Okay, so someone taking part in this book, what are they transforming into, do you think? And what's pulled them to want to read such a book that's so different in a sense, because it's sort of a self-development book meets metaphysical, meets this sort of adventure kind of theme.
Yes, and so my intention is to awaken them to the magic and mystery of it all, to really develop that connection, the cosmic connection, to understand that they're a drop in the infinite sea and the entire sea all at once, an eternal being standing at the center of their creation in this kind of existential reality in the eternal now moment, and holographically projecting, mentally projecting holographic fractals of their soul into multiple time and space dimensions. And to start to understand these concepts simply and yet profoundly, but in all of this, to start to get answers to the greatest questions of all time. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? And once these questions start to be answered, and one starts to realize that they're an eternal soul and also immortal and infinite, it allows them to transcend this 3D matrix of everyday life and open their eyes to the magic and mystery, to help them stand in awe of creation and feel at one with it.
Do you think that takes away the issues that they're going through in any day-to-day issues they're going through, or do you think it just helps them make more sense of maybe why they're going through it? And is this a pathway for them to come up to their own understanding by tuning into their own intuitive side in the end to why they're going through what they're going through?
So what they're going through in their daily lives or throughout their life in this incarnation is really addressed in my book, Wake Up. And so I give them the opportunity to start with Wake Up. So by the time they come to Rise Up, we have addressed their daily life and also what they've been through in this life. We talk about, the karmic patterns and breaking free of limiting beliefs and expanding into, more of who they are and what they can truly be. Overcoming negative emotions and letting go of those attachments while embracing the positive experiences of their lives. And so we do meditations and journaling and even movement in Wake Up. So by the time they reach Rise Up, now we're expanding into the more metaphysical experience of life that's more deeply spiritual. So they sort of understand like their meaning and purpose of, why did they come into this lifetime and Wake Up? But then in Rise Up, it's, why have I been created and who am I as a created being as an aspect of the one infinite creator, so we expand into more, complex and yet simple concepts about creation and our role in it.
But we're all going to be tested, though, aren't we? There are tests. I'm using the word tests very lightly. I mean, there's always going to be some issues that show up in our life, no matter what they are, right? And there's no life without, some issues that are going on, whatever it may be. Do you know what I mean? Whatever it may be for people. Maybe they've lost someone just recently. Maybe whatever it could be, right? We're not talking about the avoidance of those types of things. We're just saying that this type of work helps them to cope better when they do arise. Or are you saying that actually by going to this deeper part of themselves, then actually we would never make choices that take us down paths where we have to go through such tough experiences sometimes. But that's not still saying that we don't go through challenges sometimes.
Definitely. And in my book, Wake Up, we address, those very transformational experiences that we do go through in this lifetime. And you mentioned someone losing someone. We have a whole chapter on death and dying. And we have a chapter on, transformational experiences where, you go through suffering and maybe you awaken to a new way of living and being as you align with your higher self. But then there's a period of transition, right? Where you have to transition out of the way you've been living your life into a new and different way. And there'll be leaps of consciousness along the way. But yes, Wake Up is very much about, dealing with the challenges and also the gifts, of everyday life. The subtitle is a 10-day life lessons workshop. And so certainly the tests that we encounter are all about the life lessons that we came here to learn, right? And so when we know that, they don't maybe seem like tests as much as, oh, here comes that life lesson again, right?
Well, yeah, because they may show up just to say, well, are you sure you've dealt with that? Have you dealt with it? It may show up in a different way, a lot less, fierce than it normally might have done before. But you'll react so differently to it because you've worked on yourself. It takes a certain type of person, though, doesn't it, or maybe a certain type of soul to do this type of work. What sort of person is coming to you to do this type of work? Have they been through the mill basically, and they are just at a point where they want change?
Yes, I would say someone who is seeking a positive transformation in their life, someone who's seeking a better way of living and being. And also then with Rise Up, that would be someone who's seeking the deeper, more profound truths of reality in our existence and consciousness. But I would call that a truth seeker.
Right. But is there any access to you in that process of going through reading your book? I mean, how would they get access to you if they wanted that? Do you offer that at all?
I absolutely do. So I'm a spiritual counselor. a psychic reader, as well as an energy healer. So I offer sessions throughout their journey. And so at any time, they can go to my website and they can sign up with us, for a session with me. And we can talk about the experiences that they're going through either the wake up journey or the rise up journey.
And your website is?
SuzanneRossWellness.com.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, we'll put that on the, that is coming up on the screen, but it's also, we'll put that in the description below as well. Now, one thing that you talked about when it came to Rise Up is the idea, well, you mentioned it a few times, the idea of time, and almost like you were talking about multidimensional reality, I think, but I mean, I might have misheard you there.
No, I'm definitely talking about multidimensional time and space realms.
Okay. So, well, actually, before I ask you that, let me ask you this. Where is any and all of this information come from for you to put these books together? Where's that coming from?
It's a combination, Kevin, of the 500 books I have in my library and going into deep trance meditation and really developing that ability to channel. And both of the books came through in channeling. I didn't want my books to be like anybody else's books. I wanted the material to be original and guided by spirit. And that is exactly what happened with the first book, Wake Up, which is more like a workshop. The processes in the workshop were downloaded and came through in channeling and automatic writing. And the same with Rise Up. The bigger questions that I was asking came through in channeling. And I used Dragon Naturally Speaking voice recognition software because I'd be in meditation and these answers would come through that I had never read about or learned about or knew about before.
And we all have this ability to do this, right? That's what your books and your work is teaching, right? But if I was to ask you again, I don't know if I asked you this at the beginning, I think I did. What and who are you channeling?
It depends. And when I first started doing the channeling, I was channeling beings. It became very clear that I was channeling Archangel Michael. I was channeling Yeshua. I was channeling Magdalene. I was channeling Mother Mary. And it would be very clear. And then as I started channeling these different, and Saint Germain came through, and it's Sophia, and they would come through at different times, Kevin. It was interesting how they would appear for different topics that I was exploring. And so they would come in at different times for different reasons. And then one day I was going into my channeling and nobody was coming through. And I was thinking, okay, like, have I just completely lost my connection here? And then it just came through in a moment that who I was connecting to was my own higher selves, my own multidimensional aspects of self. I was becoming this greater expression of myself, and these answers were coming from the wholeness of my being, you could say my eternal soul, who's connected to the infinite soul.
Do you think that's the same process when you wrote this book?
Well, either way, you've opened a channel, right? And I believe that whether it's your spirit guides or your own higher self directing, like who's going to come in for what purposes when, but that's what my journey felt like, because you see, in the beginning, I was seeking answers to these big questions, and these higher beings then, at my request, my curiosity, they came in to be of assistance during that period of time. But then when I started like expanding and just leaving it open as to whatever wanted to come in, that's when I felt, okay, now I'm connecting to my own higher dimensional aspects. Not asking anything specific. I've just come to see what wants to come through today, like an open slate, right? And that's when I became aware that I wasn't, channeling these specific entities anymore, that I was actually tuning in to the wholeness of who I
When
am.
I started this process of doing this channeling docuseries that I've been putting out there, right? One of the sort of angles that I went on, and I don't know if I went out to do this, but it was just I wanted to bring through something new and modern, and that new and modern side that came out was the idea of the multidimensional reality, that you know, we are part of a multidimensional reality, bigger than what we understand. And not to get too carried away with it, because we're still here, as far as we understand it. Do you know what I mean? We've still got mundane things to get through, and I don't always want to lose other people that may come into this material to begin with, right? But it's still fascinating, right? What did you come across with the work that you're doing and with multidimensional reality, and how do you use that in your work, or what have you, not maybe how you use it, but how is it as part of our experience and makeup into who we are and what we want to choose?
And so, certainly, yes, we are here in the third dimensional reality, but the way that we choose to be in this third dimensional reality is the key. People talk about ascension, and I don't want that to be a trigger word for anybody. So I just simply say it's just an ascension of consciousness. It's an upliftment. It's rising above who you are now to become the highest version of your best self every day. And in doing that, you just start to vibrate at a higher frequency, for lack of a better word. You start to live more in a state of love and compassion and kindness and patience and understanding and this empathy. When you start to develop this oneness with all that is, with other people, you start to realize that, you are God. God is experiencing through you as you, and so is everyone else. And so we're all one in the mind of God. We're all one as the one great self. And these revelations, Kevin, it helps to uplift us and transcend the 3D matrix. And when I say that, I mean, you still go to the post office, you still pay your taxes, you still go grocery shopping, but who you are when you do these things makes all the difference. Are you radiating love and light when you go out into the world? Are you making an effort to connect with others, or are you staring at your phone? Are you engaging others? Right? Are you trying to be a positive force when you go out into the world?
I get it. Um, where does the multidimensional work, though, come into? I mean, that's great what you've just explained there, and I love what you're talking about. But let's just go back to that multidimensional side as well. What is that in connection to your work?
So when I talk about like 5D consciousness, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, transcending the 3D separation and duality, and the lower shadow energy, and just becoming all about unity and peace and harmony. Okay, so that's sort of like an ascension of consciousness, right? And so you start to move into a higher dimensional expression of who you are, even though you're in 3D. And so when did multidimensionality come into my work? I had a missing time experience here in Sedona back in 2017 when two friends had come to stay with me. And one night we started talking about the Arcturian star race. I had become interested in these star races, the Pleiadians, the Arcturians. And my friends were also interested in the Arcturians. When I saw the word Arcturians, I was like, I have to know everything there is to know about Arcturians. And so this night we set an intention. We held hands and in a circle, and we called upon the Arcturians to come and make direct contact We had no idea what was going to happen, Kevin, right? But we went out on my back deck, which is an upper deck. And from this back deck, we had seen many phenomenal lights and flashes of light on the horizon, crafts on the horizon in the distance. And so, but we hadn't seen something that was really direct contact, right? So we went out on my back deck. It was after dinner, about 8 o'clock, and we saw a huge explosion of light on the horizon. And we all felt dizzy. So we grabbed the handrail and we're saying to each other, I feel dizzy. And then the motion detectors on my stairwell, the bottom one went off, the middle and the upper. And we just stared at this because no one was coming up the stairs. And then the next thing, we were standing there staring at each other, cold, wondering, okay, why are we still here? Let's go inside. But we thought only 15, 20 minutes had passed. So we tried to make conversation, but we were kind of disoriented and exhausted. And I said, I'm just going to go to bed. And then I turned my phone over and it said 12:40. And I was shocked, but I was also exhausted. So I just fell into bed, woke up the next morning. I felt nauseous. My palms were sweaty. I still felt kind of disoriented. I came out to the kitchen and looked at the coffee pot. I said, no way. I just sipped on some water. My friends came out of their bedrooms. They looked all disheveled and disoriented. We all felt nauseous. And then one of my friends said, did you see what time it was when we went to bed? And we all just went, yeah. And we just sat there stunned. It wasn't like we were excitedly saying, oh my God, you think we got taken up? It wasn't like that at all. We were just stunned. And we just kind of stared into space and
what do you think that was?
To try to integrate what may have happened.
What do you think happened?
So I went to a psychic here in Sedona who's very well known, has written many books. And before I was even seated in her chair, she said, well, you've had quite the experience, haven't you? And she said that she saw a pod ship land in my yard. 3 Arcturians come out, walk up the stairwell, take each of us by the hand, walk us into their pod ship and be transported into a larger mothership. She said there we were given a tour of the ship and we were downloaded with advanced knowledge, wisdom, and technologies that would be revealed over time. Within 2 weeks of my experience, I started drawing large circles on poster boards with 12 circles around it, like the zodiac wheel, but I knew these were dimensions. And then I started to fill in who I was in these different dimensions, where I was, and what I was doing there. It would come through in a download. In 5 minutes, I could fill in all the circles. And then I started to be able to go into meditation and see into these realms and communicate with those higher dimensional aspects of myself who were there. And as I did, I started to notice these spiritual gifts, like my psychic awareness just exploded.
That's interesting, that is. Sorry, I've just got to say this because in the channeling docuseries that I did and still doing, but that's interesting because that's what they said, that we are able to communicate to these aspects, and by even healing this aspect, it heals all the rest, and healing the others, it heals this. It's all vice versa. It's all connected. But do they matter or don't they matter? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And you know why? Because I was going to give a presentation on stage about this. And the morning before, I woke up at dawn and I saw like holographic images before me, Kevin. And what I was being shown is this isn't just this wonderful soul reunion and you're gathering fragmented aspects of your soul. This has a much greater meaning and purpose. When you are merged with higher dimensional aspects of yourself, it ignites dormant DNA. I often wondered, why do we only use 4% of our DNA? Certainly the rest isn't junk. Why is only 10% of our brain online? And what I was shown, it's because we're only being 10% of who we are here. And when we go into the higher dimensions, we become a greater percentage of who we are. We are able to turn on dormant DNA as we merge with these higher dimensional aspects. And so you see, you become a greater expression of yourself as you
So
expand.
some of this dormant DNA, that's one way of understanding what we're talking about here, but that may not even be the case. It may be something else we're opening. But let's just go with what you're saying there, because that sounds feasible, right? In some respects, yeah? Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know, right? But it just the thesis of it, right? That we're, by connecting with these other aspects, we're opening up greater portions of ourselves in this reality, right? So the byproduct of that is what? You're more intuitive, maybe. You're able to see the larger pictures. You're just able to maybe flow and make better choices, right? Because you're coming more from love, maybe in your choices. It's maybe opening up some deeper parts that is almost like the veil's coming down a bit. Do you know what I mean? On this reality.
Definitely.
Yep. Okay.
Mhm.
So and when you say that you saw 5 versions of other realities over a short amount of time, I'm personifying words here, right? They maybe were the 5 that you needed to see at that time, but actually the multidimensional realities, could it be that there are infinitive aspects of ourselves out there?
So I said in 5 minutes, I downloaded 12 aspects of myself, just to clarify. But listen, I attune to Theosophy. Uh, the books written by Madame Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Isis Unveiled, and then Alice Bailey came out with a series of books about Theosophy. And what Theosophy would say is that we are expressing 12 aspects of ourself in each of 12 dimensions. You see, it's based on the 12 archetypes, the original 12 archetypes that the creator expanded into, like the zodiac wheel. And that's the 12 archetypes who then became the 24 elders. You see, and then we're eternal souls doing the same thing. We are expressing 12 aspects of our personality in each of 12 dimensions, according to Theosophy. And that would give us 144 soul extensions that they call the monad. And so you see, here we are in 3D. So what if I'm a Virgo and I'm expressing as a Sagittarius in another timeline and a Leo in another timeline, and you see on, and that's 3D. And so I do past life regressions for people first. Let's see who you're being in 3D first. Okay, then we transition through the astral realm and make a conscious choice to look into then the next dimension, which would be 5D. And the soul in 5D that has the most to do with this soul in this incarnation will be the one that comes through. But we could continue to explore 12 aspects in 5D and in 7D, because I've been shown that the odd number dimensions are incarnational planes and that the even numbers are transitional planes.
Okay. And where does this fit into your latest book, Rise Up? Why have you connected, or have you connected that into Rise Up?
So in Rise Up, I present this concept that we come from this infinite sea of pure consciousness. And this pure consciousness flows from a portal from infinity into eternity, because the one great self needed to create an eternal realm that had a beginning but no ending, unlike infinity that has no beginning and no ending. But you're going to start creating, you need to create an eternal realm that has a beginning. And there, the creator, the divine trinity became the creative trinity, and they created this central universe that's existential in nature, but everything is in its perfect divine blueprint, existing in the eternal now moment. And then I present this idea that these eternal souls are mentally projecting holographic fractals of themselves into multiple time and space dimensions. Why? To know thyself through experience and to experience love.
And again, let's just go back to bare basics. Why does it matter? Why raise it in the book? Can you do an elevator pitch for that? Like, why does it matter?
It matters because then we know that we are eternal souls and we have all of these amazing adventures unfolding in many different timelines and dimensions. We have an understanding that we are so much more than just this person we're being right here and now. But we can be all of that and more in this lifetime with this greater understanding of our connection to source that we're expressing, in all these multiple dimensions all at once, but also that we're connected to our eternal soul. And as holograms work, even though we're a holographic fractal, we know how holograms work. We're still the whole. Each fractal still contains the whole. So we still are our eternal soul.
Okay, let's take a break there. I want to add something here, right? Hang on. So one thing I remember coming through the docuseries that I filmed was that they all gave their own take and a bit of the piece of the puzzle. And one piece was that we may go to bed one night, right? We may have made choices that day, choices that have ramification, yeah? And that you've woken up and that you think that you're in the same reality as you was before. Now, nothing can prove that you're not, but actually, because you've made choices and you are a master manifester, your consciousness is now awoken in another reality with very slight changes. And as you make a choice of something bigger that you're trying to attract, you're kind of sliding into these other realities until you get to the reality aligned with the one that you actually want. The progression to get there is not overnight, like you just go from there to there. It's a slow kind of progression, and sometimes it can be quicker. Does that make any sense, what I'm saying there, to what you've discovered?
I understand what you're proposing, and this idea that every choice we make sends us off into another direction, that then a new reality will unfold, and that possibly there's just an infinite number of endless possibilities as far as realities that we keep stepping into based on the choices that we make. Also, I believe that with electron wave particle duality, that we are creating the reality that we experience as we walk through it. We are literally transforming waves into particles as we move through the reality. So you see, what was a wave, we have now translated into a form or a particle based on what we expect to see, based on our intentions, based on our vibration. And so we are choosing our reality every moment of every day with the power of our thoughts. So I believe that, we're vibrating at this higher frequency, and we choose that, then we're going to experience a higher vibrational reality. But I could wake up tomorrow morning and say, you know what, screw all this. I think it's all stupid, and I'm just going to go on another route. I'm just going to, dive into, going to work in an office in a cubicle and just forget all this. And I'm just going to be whoever I feel like being without care about what other people might think, or, I might, not be a kind person anymore. And I decide I'm just going to be a grumpy, right? I mean, I'm just going to create an entirely different reality for myself right then and there.
And that's possible. You could.
I could.
You could.
And then my reality will look very, very different. And it's all to do with my thoughts.
So, absolutely. So what about, those people that well, maybe we all think this way sometimes, but what about, you think that you're changing your, the life that you've all, that you're wanting to form your new life into this whatever direction it is you want to go in, right? And you're manifesting, and you're you're shifting, but those around you, and the earth that we live on, right, the other people out there, it still looks like that they're de-evolving, right? Or that we're not all evolving. I don't think we came here as a soul to have an experience, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, but to have an experience where it's not opposites all the time. If we want a reality where we're all, walking around as though we're back home in the spirit world, I just don't see that is the reality that I will ever be part of, or you would ever be part of, or anyone on this planet would be part of. I think, don't you think that we came here for it to be so opposite like it is?
Certainly in this third dimension, and maybe even in some of the higher dimensions, you still have some duality. But I think the third dimension in particular is a reality of duality that offers specific experiences and lessons that can only be learned in this type of opposite reality. That 3D, that's its mark, is.
Yeah. So when we say we're trying to go to 5D, though, how are we trying to? Are we trying to experience what that would feel like, but yet we're still in, and always will be for as long as we're breathing, and as long as we've not, what we would say, crossed over, we're always going to have the 3D around us. But the 5D is like, can I experience a more loving version of myself in the 3D world? Is that what we're trying to do?
Definitely, because the more that you expand into unity, peace, harmony, joy, empathy, the more you experience that, and the less that you experience the opposite: fear, separation, anger, hatred, right? You just start creating a reality for yourself right here and now that is far less confrontational, that is much more focused on unity and love, peace and joy, and you don't even hardly experience.
Yeah, because some people have sold the whole 5D thing as though it's, we're gonna go to a theme park together, and we'll be away from all the other crazy people, in a sense, right? We're gonna have a separation where you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be on 5D. Do you know what I mean? And it's nonsense, because no, unless you're going to cross over, unless you want to cross over now and go experience 5D all the time, or something higher than that, then go do it. But that is not the experience you're going to have down here, right? Am I wrong? I mean, I don't.
No, I believe you, and I think it's just like being a 5D version of yourself in this reality, and you may become less and less aware of the discord and discontent and chaos and separation in the world, because you are now creating a reality for yourself where it hardly even feels like that exists outside of your world.
Why did we not want this in other incarnations? Why in this incarnation are we so wanting, some of us, even for us to have this conversation for others to hear? Why are we so wanting to getting to a higher level of living? Why didn't we want it before? If past lives even exist, right? There may be, what we call past lives is not even how it operates. It's totally different to that. But we're not even able to understand it. We just call it the way we think it is, right? But if it is that way, if it is something in that direction, why didn't we want it before, or did we? And why did we never get there, I wonder?
I think we got there in the last golden age of enlightenment, and I think we are speeding into the next golden age of enlightenment.
Right, which you maybe are referring to as Atlantis, potentially, or some other thing it may have been called.
Right. The temple building cultures of the ancient past, and back to my book, Rise Up, we go into the ancient past. We visit the Egyptian pyramids. We visit the Mayan temples because we want to learn from these ancient, advanced civilizations what they believed, what was happening then, that they were able to build these ornate temples and become priest astronomers and engage in Egyptian mystery schools, right? And then 12,500 years later, we're in the Dark Ages and we can barely even build a shack and an outhouse. And we're lopping off heads and burning libraries. It's all about the ages of the yugas, and our solar system is on this path. That was going from a golden age on a descending path into the dark ages. And then we turned the corner. And now our solar system is on the ascending arc, moving toward the golden age. I believe that we were put on an accelerated evolution program to speed us into this golden age. And we're getting bombarded with these highly charged photons that are raising the Schumann resonance and affecting us. Right? This is a special time.
I guess it takes a certain type of soul to want to come down to this level, because if there are understandings that we don't have to come back to this particular incarnation on planet Earth, and we can go elsewhere for easier times, then, we've got to be pretty brave in some levels to want to come here.
Just remember that you're putting time into it, right? And that our third dimensional selves never go anywhere. Neither do our fifth dimensional selves or our seventh dimensional selves, right? They're still existing in the eternal now moment. This aspect of ourself is just choosing to shift its perception into a higher dimensional way of living and being, right? And so you could say that these soul aspects are evolutionary in the sense that each soul aspect will continue to evolve and shift its perception. But then, the new soul comes in the lower dimensions, or the new soul aspect. But the eternal soul is projecting all of these aspects all at once in the eternal now. So you see what I'm saying? The third dimensional aspects, they never go anywhere.
No.
There's,
Let's just give a little bit of easy advice to people, maybe, because obviously, we've gone fairly deep just there. I want to manifest something, or my life's at this situation right now. Whatever situation your life is at, whatever level it's at, it is changeable because you are in charge of this. Do you feel that we're in charge of this? Make it a quick answer, because obviously we're just getting near the end here.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. And do you feel that even though we're in charge, that sometimes there are things that have to happen, we have to go through certain things, and it's not a punishment, it's almost like we need to go through them, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel for us to manifest ourselves out of whatever we had to experience?
I think the dark night can be a great gift.
Yeah. But it's a SOB, isn't it, to have to go through it? Do you know what I mean?
It's all your perception as you're moving through it, right? If you can recognize it as a blessing and keeping in mind that everything's in divine order and divine timing, and embrace it as such, you can move through it in an easy way.
Okay, but do you think then that what we call the dark night of the soul was actually us that took ourselves there? Maybe even me saying a moment ago that maybe there's some things we have to go through. Really, even if you think you have to go through it and you've put a signpost there in your life path to say, look, you can go through this, you still don't have to say yes to it. We must actually say yes to it. We're not forced by anything to say, hey, you make sure you go down that way. We're going to push you to go down that way because that's what we want you to experience because you chose it before you came here. Actually, there's free will all along the path. We don't have to do what we thought we could or needed to go through. We can actually say no to it, but most of us say yes to it.
Well, I think some things just come in suddenly, you know, like a loved one gets in a horrible accident, or you get in a horrible accident, or suddenly your house burns down, or, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh crap, now what? Or, you know, you lose your job and you have no money.
Well,
And
maybe
you know what
those
I'm
things
saying?
aren't always
Like,
planned. That's my point. Maybe they're not always planned, but when they do happen, well, okay, do you think they're always planned? Think it's just life showing up, just happening?
no, I don't think anything is a random thing. I think that you know, these things happen for a reason at the time that they do, and it's all about like the lessons that it has to teach you, and they're powerful lessons. It's another test, like, how can you get through this? How are you going to interact with this and react to it? Where are you at on your journey?
I get that. Okay, here's another way of saying it then. I know when I've said yes to things that I knew at the time weren't really in my fullest alignment, as in what I mean by that, but without using fluffy words, is that I knew I wasn't happy with really saying yes to that. Yeah, I knew really life was saying, you know, my intuition was saying, nah, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. If you want to do it, you can do it, but don't do it. And you do it, you say, you know, Geronimo, you do it, right? You've put yourself in that situation. That wasn't life making you do that. You did it. And the only way out of it, and there is a way out, it may take you a long time to get out of that situation, or at least an experience of hell to get out of that experience, right? But that experience wasn't forced upon you. You chose out of love, and that was a side effect.
Absolutely. Certainly reminds me of my first marriage. I agreed to marry this guy because it looked good on paper and we were a good fit. But I knew in my heart it wasn't the right choice. I just going along for the ride, and I did end up miserable, and it wasn't just him, it was the whole situation that it landed me in.
Okay, but look back on that then. Keep on that, because that's important, because a lot of people go through the same thing, right? Really, it wasn't a mistake. I'm not saying that was. I'm saying I'm pretty sure that your soul, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the experience you got from that must have been so powerful that without it, maybe you wouldn't even be doing what you're doing right now.
Definitely. Always offers you a leap in consciousness when you come. I call it awakening from suffering. And there's a chapter in my book, Wake Up, Awakening from Suffering. You find yourself in such a place of despair that there's two ways to go: check out or surrender. And when you surrender, get ready because you may very well experience a profound moment of awakening.
Yeah, when you make choices that aren't in love, yes, you can set yourself in a whole different situation, but at the same time, yeah, what we're saying is nothing that can't be manifested out, if I'm using the right words, right?
Hope and faith and, you know, the love of others, and knowing there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always a higher way of living and being, and that you have guardian angels and spirit guides with you always.
Yeah, and they're helping you, aren't they? They're helping you.
Definitely.
You know,
Yes.
they care, because they don't want to see you in this state, but at the same time, they obviously are realizing that this is a very important time for you as well in growth. Yeah. Where is anything that we're talking about right now in the connection with the book? I suppose it's in connection with your work in general, isn't it, as well?
Thank you for that. Yes, I would say that our discussion is a reflection of everything that I do in totality. I am covering mind, body, and spirit in my Up trilogy. Lighten Up is going to be about activating the light body. And so we take it to a whole nother level with Lighten Up. But certainly I live here in Sedona, Arizona, and I guide spiritual journeys out on the land. People come from all over the country and all over the world. to come here to the sacred vortex of Sedona. And I have the privilege of taking them out into sacred vortex sites and guiding them on a journey through sound healing and meditation. And I also created an internet television network, Kevin, called SciSpy.tv. I came up with the genre, Sci-Spy, merging science and spirituality, and we now have 9 channels and over 50 shows. And so that's another thing that I do. And yeah, hosting an event here.
I should just say to you as well, Susan, I've actually been to Sedona, and it is a beautiful, amazing, powerful place. And what I found is that whatever issues that you're going through right now, it really does bring them to the surface in Sedona if you've not, worked on them, basically. So yeah, very interesting place, and a place that you were doing retreats, and I believe that you're going to do your next retreat sometime later on this year, an in-person retreat there. So could you just tell us a bit about that retreat?
Thank you. Sedona Ascension Retreats.com. I'm hosting a Sedona Ascension retreat during the spring equinox, March 20th through 22nd. And when you go to Sedona Ascension Retreats.com, you'll see that we have over 20 speakers, performers, practitioners, presenters. It includes 2 guest panels, a contactee guest panel and a near-death experiencer panel. There's going to be near-death experiences coming in from all over the world for this guest panel, contactees from all over the country coming in for the contactee guest panel, and then we're having an experiencer workshop as well. It also includes tours into the sacred vortex sites of Sedona. So we're really looking forward to our Sedona Ascension retreat. I wish you could come.
Well, it sounds fantastic, but there's other reasons why I can't leave where I'm at right now. I've got so much. Oh, I wish I could talk about some things, but I can't. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. But thank you for mentioning that as well. And again, that's on your website, and we'll try to put links in the description below. Well, listen, we've talked about so much here, and I really appreciate you going over time and just giving us that extra time right now. And I'll just say, Susan, just thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I greatly appreciate it.